We begin sort of a second part of the book of Isaiah, Sefer Yeshaya today, which is a series of prophecies for other nations. Up to now, Yeshaya has prophesied mostly in Yehuda, mostly to the people of Judah, even though much of his prophecy has applied as well to the people of Israel. But today, he turns his attention towards the other nations, and he's not the only one. Yirmiyahu will do this, Yechezkel will do this, and I think Amos does this as well. And it's not prophecy that's directed at them. It's told to us, it's told to Bnei Yisrael, so maybe it's supposed to be some sort of comfort to Bnei Yisrael, some sort of Schadenfreude. I'm sorry, my German pronunciation is not so good. These are going to be our enemies, but at least they will fall down. And here we begin. Matzah Bavel Asher Chaza Yeshaya ben Amot. So this is the matzah, the burden, the pronouncement to Bavel, which was said by Yeshaya. Now, at his time period, Bavel was not a very strong empire. Certainly not during the time of Achaz, certainly not time of Uzziyahu. We first see Bavel, the Babylonians, when towards the end of Yeshaya's life, in his later years, when emissaries of theirs appear at Chizkiyahu's kingdom. They want to bring Chizkiyahu into an alliance against the Assyrians, and that's the first time we see them. So this is a prediction of the future, one that he will not see. Al har nishpa su'unes harimu kol lahem hanifu yad v'yavo petchene devim. Raise a standard upon a hill, cry aloud to them, wave a hand, let them enter the gates of the nobles. Ani tziviti lemikudashi. I have summoned my purified, my holy ones, gam karati giborei la'api alizei gavati, to execute my wrath. Behold, I call my strong ones, my proudly exultant ones, kol hamon beharim dmut amrav, a tumult from the mountains, a mighty force, kol sha'on mlechet goyim nasfim adonai tzvot mfakei tzva milchama. Look, an uproar of kingdoms, nation assembling. God, and here, as we've seen many times in the last few chapters, is Hashem tzvakot, the tzava, the army. God, the Lord of hosts, is getting ready for war. They come from a distant land, from the end of the sky, with weapons of divine wrath to ravage all the earth. Right. So here we're talking about the Babylonians. They're going to come in. They're going to come to Israel. They're going to destroy. We know that they saw it in the last chapter, chapter 25 of the book of Melachim, when they destroy Yerushalayim completely, when they burn the Beit HaMikdash. So they're on his way. And much like he's described the Assyrians in previous chapters, they are Kli Za'amo. They are weapons of God's wrath. And we continue verse 6. Helilu ki karov yom Adonai kisod mishada yavo. But the day of God is near, and it shall come like havoc from God, from Shaddai, from Shakai. Al kain kol yadayim tirpena v'chol levav eno shimas. All hands, which were so strong, are going to go limp. Every human heart shall melt, shall sink. V'nivhalu tzirim v'chavalim yochezu ki yoda yichilun. And they will be overcome by terror. They will be seized by pangs. Ishal re'ehu yitamu pnei lehavim pneihem. And they'll gaze at each other in horror, with their faces livid with fright. And as we have many times in these chapters, and then generally, where one of the images that's used, one of the metaphors, is like a woman who's giving birth and has terrible birth pangs. But the difference, of course, between the birth pangs of the woman is she is going to have a baby, she's going to have a child. And here the pains and the birth pangs, the horrors, are not going to end up well. The day of God is coming, where there will be fury and wrath. The earth will become desolate. It will wipe out the sinners. The stars and the constellations shall give no light. The sun shall be dark when it rises, and the moon shall diffuse no glow. Right? This is going to be a day of complete disaster. Think of the, great paintings of the apocalypse by the medieval artists. Right? So this is what was described here. This is going to be an apocalypse. It's going to be destruction. There's going to be no light. It's going to be ravaging and damaging. It's going to be wrathful. And it's going to be afterwards empty, a vacuum, desolate. Ufakadati al tevel ra'av al rishaim avonam vishpati geon zaydim v'gavat aritzim ashpio. And right, I'm going to count I'm going to take to account the world for its evil, and the wicked for their sins, for their iniquity. I will put an end to the pride of the arrogant and humble the haughtiness of tyrants. And this is something, right, that we've seen Yeshaya has said in many ways in regards already to the Assyrians. The Assyrians, who we said are going to attack and destroy the northern kingdom and destroy basically most of Jerusalem, but Sha'ar Yashuv, there's going to be a remnant who remains. There's going to be this prince who's born, this Sar Shalom, we know as Chizkiyahu, and so we will survive the kingdom of Yehuda. They will survive the Assyrians, and they will go down because of their pride, even though they were God's messengers to the Jewish people. Nevertheless, in the end, the people who were wicked, the people who caused destruction, they will suffer themselves, and that's the same thing that's being said here. These people are wicked, and yes, they will be successful in battle, but then they will have their comeuppance. Okir enosh mipaz, the Adam mi ketem ophir. I will make people scarcer than fine gold, and mortals more scarce than the gold of Ophir. I can't say I know much about the gold of Ophir. And Rashi says that this refers to when Daniel is honored with gold on the night of the writing on the wall. They dress Daniel in purple and beautiful clothing, and he gets more gold because of what happens there. And so he's saying, right, and that's that night, we haven't gotten there, the book of Daniel is a long time from now, but that night when the writing on the wall is the writing that the kingdom of Babylon will be destroyed. And so that's why Rashi is citing it here, because this is, of course, talking about the population of the Babylonians with their might, with their strength there, who come and destroy, that they will, that ultimately they will fall. Continuing verse 13. Al kain shamayim argiz vatir'ash ha'aretz mimkoma. The earth shall be, the heavens shall be shaken. The earth will leap out of its place. Be'evrat Adonai tzvaotu v'yom charon apo. At the fury of God on the day of his burning wrath, right? Again, destruction of this great empire, the Babylonians. Like gazelles that are chased, and like sheep that no one gathers, each man shall turn away from his people. Right? Each man will have to flee back to his country, back to his territory. That's what's going to happen. The people are going to have to run like deers, roving away back to Babylon, because they will be defeated, they will be destroyed. All who remain will be pierced through. All who are caught shall be fought by the sword. So they better run home, because there's not going to be any mercy, is what's being said here. It's going to be destruction. It's going to be the complete downfall and destruction of the Babylonian civilization, the same way they did that to so many others. Va'ololehem yirut shu le'eineihem. Their babes will be dashed to pieces in their sights. And we think we hear a phrase like that, and it's difficult to see, even though the Babylonians were our enemies, at least to me, because when I hear something like that, I think of the Shoah, I think of the Holocaust, I think of the parents who had to see their children be killed in front of their faces. And so it's a very difficult verse to read, to think of such anger. Unashehem tishkad kavna, and their wives shall be raped. Hineni me'ir alehem et madai asher kesef lo yachshavu v'zahav lo yichafsu vo. So what happens? God says, I'm going to stir the madai. And we know the Babylonians, or we don't know, we will know right now that the Babylonians are conquered by the Persians, Paras u'Madai. Right? Achashverosh, the king of Paras u'Madai, the Persians, Paras u'Madai, led by Koresh, led initially by Cyrus the Great, as he calls himself, or maybe probably others called him that as well, would have been risky not to call him that. They defeat the Babylonians, and then for a time, they become a world power, of course, until they are defeated in time by the Greeks, who become the next world power. And so Madai will be stirred up against them. Madai doesn't care about gold. They don't care about silver, right? They can't be bribed. So many of the kings who came, right, with will destroy you, Yehuda. Oh, here's taxes, here's extra payment, here you can have all the gold and the silver from the temple treasuries here. We'll cut down the doors of the Beit HaMikdash and give them to you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. That's what Chizkiyahu does at first when the Assyrians come to him. First, he offers them tons of tribute, but then, they see, oh, he's weak, and they're going to attack him again. But that doesn't work with the Persians. What's saying here is they just want to kill. They just want to destroy. They are incredibly cruel, and therefore they will destroy the kingdom of Babylon. Ukshatot ne'arim tiratashna ufrivetem lo yirachemu al banim lo tachus einam. Their bows will shatter their young. They'll show no pity to infants. They shall not spare the children. Vayta Bavel tzvi malchut tiferet gaon kastim in Babylon. The glory of the kingdoms, the splendor of the Chaldeans, right? Sometimes it's called the Chaldeans, sometimes they're called the Babylonians, the Kasdim in Hebrew. Kimapechat Elohim et stone vet Amorah. What's going to happen to them? It'll become like Sodom and Gomorrah, completely and utterly destroyed. And I think part of saying it's like Sodom and Amorah is not just saying that it's going to be completely destroyed, but that God is the one who is doing it here through the Persians, through Parasu Madai, right? Parasu Madai are the ones who are going to physically do it, but God destroyed Sodom va'Amorah through earthquakes and thunder and all sorts of terrible winds. And that's what's going to happen here to the Chaldeans, to the Babylonians. They are going to be destroyed and they are going to be desolate. Lo teshev, we're in verse 20. Lo teshev la netzach v'lo tishkon ador v'ador lo yahel sham aravi v'roim lo yirbetzu sham. And now we're going to describe how desolate, how empty it's going to be. It will not be settled. It will not be dwelt in through the ages. No Arab shall pitch his tent here, right? Arab here, what does an Aravi mean here? Means a nomad more than anybody else. Even the nomads are not going to pitch their tents there. It's going to be a place that's going to be completely empty. The shepherds will not have their flock there. So nobody's even, in a sense, passing through. That's how desolate it's going to be. V'ravsu sham tziyim u'malu v'tehem ochim v'shachnu sham benot ya'ana u'seirim yirkdu sham. Beasts shall lie there. It's going to be empty. Think of any of these sort of apocalyptic movies where, they go up to Philadelphia or New York or whatever city it is, and it's overrun by trees, by plants, and they're, I don't know, gorillas running through the city or whatever it's going to be. That's the image. I do not know if the producers and directors of movies took this from, Yeshaya, but that's the image that I see here, probably a little less colorful. Buildings not quite as high. The houses are going to be filled with owls. The ostriches will make their home, and there also the jackals will dance. The jackals will abide in its castles, the dragons in its places of pleasure. Her hour is closer hand. Her days will not be long, right? You think, Bavel, that you're in charge, that everything's going to be fine. You think you're going to live forever. That's not what's going to happen. There are going to be serpents. There are going to be jackals. There are going to be hyenas. There are going to be vultures. Your armenot, your palaces, your castles will be almenot. Right? And it's interesting to think. If you look at verse 22, the word that's used there is almenotav, right? And almenotav, sometimes the lamed and the resh get confused in Hebrew. Sometimes it switches. Think of armon means a castle, and almanah is a widow. And I think very much by switching the letter there, but the word there means a castle. It's saying the castles will be widowed. the castles will be empty. What is an Armon will look like an Almana. And I think that's why the wording is being changed there. I wonder whether or not, if we could see ancient texts, whether or not there were some that said Armenotav and some that said Almenotav. But the switch to me from the Resh to the Lamed, that's what it says. And so this chapter is very difficult in terms of how the destruction that's being done by, yes, it's our enemies, but the utter destruction that's being done. But in many ways, it's tit for tat. It's midah keneged midah. This is what the Babylonians are doing to everybody else. And even though they may be the instrument of God, God sees them as being wicked. They chose to be the executioners. They were the willing executioners, and thus their society needs to be completely destroyed. It has to go from Armon to Almana, from palace to widow.